Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today I need to do some maintenance on my orchids and I thought I would take you along. Maybe whatever I do gives you some inspiration, some ideas. So we'll train some spikes, some new growths that are going absolutely mental at the moment, and try to make orchids a little bit more tidy. I'll tell you what the problem is with not being tidy as I go along. So here we have an orchid that has a flower spike. As you can see, the flower spike is curving towards the light. This particular orchid is residing on my IKEA stand, which I think you already saw in today's video. I think I uploaded it today. And what happens is this flower spike has started to grow into my curtains, and that's not okay. So I need to do something about it. Now, the good thing with Oncidium type and other types of orchids which have pretty thin flower spikes is that even if they're big, they're quite flexible, so we can work with them. It's not like Phalaenopsis. I wish I could do some maintenance on a Phalaenopsis today, but it's not their season, so I don't have any new spikes. So what I want to do is train this spike to stay a little bit more straight, just so it doesn't grow into my curtain and gets damaged. Now, as you can see, we don't have too many things to tie the spike to, so we will need to use a skewer or a stake. Now, somebody told me, and I do agree, I did mention this in one of my videos, that these bamboo skewers tend to mold. And yes, I agree, I prefer not to use them, but I have no other option at the moment. I usually use them for a while until the orchid gets established and then I just remove them. However, this orchid is not yet fully established, so I'm just gonna leave it a little bit more. Currently in the process of finding some plastic skewers. It would be great because I can actually disinfect them properly. Also, what I will be using is Raffia Tape. I seem to get along with this type of material very well. It's pretty easy to work with. I tried textile thread, but I don't get along with it. It's a bit too thick, a bit hard to work with. This is so flexible and just so thin that it's just to my liking personally. So I use Raffia Tape whenever I can. So what we will do is try to find a place to insert the skewer. Of course, I don't see in the pot and I don't see if I'm touching any roots, but I'm trying to find a place that does not have many roots. So I'm just gonna insert the stake as much as I can. And even though it's kind of far away from the flower spike, it doesn't really matter. All I wanna do is try to straighten it. So I'm gonna cut a length of the Raffia Tape. I'm gonna go around the flower spike and I'm gonna try to attach it to the stake. Again, I'm not looking to make a perfectly straight spike here. I think this is fine. And right now, this flower spike should not touch the curtain. Anyway, if you choose to do this, be careful and just first see how flexible the flower spike is. Some orchids are more flexible than others. This particular spike is quite flexible. And by the way, this is a Miltassia Shellop Tolkien, just in case you were wondering. Now in the future, I will observe this orchid, and if this flower spike starts to lean more and more, I can just pin it once again further up to the stake and it should be perfectly fine. This spike will not become very rigid in the future, so right now I'm not sure that I want to tie it. I like archy flower spikes, but not extremely arched flower spikes. So for now, this one is done. Now here we have a Cattleyas orchid that needs some maintenance regarding its new growth. As you can see, this growth is going to one side. Again, she is on the stand and she's growing towards the light. Now the problem with new growth is that you cannot really train it when it's pretty small because it is very rigid. However, as it grows, it becomes more flexible. With new growth though, it's not okay to try to stake it all the way to the base because this section right here is incredibly rigid. Ants, I have an invasion of ants. Anyway, they don't eat the plants, so that's fine. So as I was saying, this part right here will be the pseudobulb. And it's already rigid, there's nothing we can do. However, we can try to bring the top part closer to the orchid. Now when you train new growth is a bit tricky because they're not very flexible and there's always the risk that you will break them. So you need to be very careful when you try to train a new growth. So first of all, try to see how bendy and how flexible this growth is. So right here is pretty much the point I'm comfortable with going. If I go a little bit more, I already feel a lot of resistance and I don't want to snap this new growth. So if you're not comfortable with training new growth like this, just don't do it. However, it is okay to maintain an orchid pretty compact, because there is always a chance you're gonna brush into it, you're gonna bump it over, and in serious cases even break the whole new growth. I am okay here. This is enough to ensure that this new growth will not stick out, it will not grow into the curtains. Now in the future you can remove this tie as the growth grows, but that's a different story. So for now this looks pretty good. I still have some room. As you can see, I could have gone a little further, but that's okay. You don't want to stress it too much. And here's another Cattleya that is threatening to grow into the curtains. This is a unifoliate Cattleya. So we'll pretty much do the same thing. I have a spike that will help me here, or rather a stake. If you don't have a stake and you'd like to train any new growth, you can simply insert a stake close to the new growth and pull it towards the stake. And as you can see, there's not much to do right here. All the orchid will move. However, this is a pretty flexible place. So what I want to do is not necessarily try to make it super straight. It's pretty impossible when you have light coming from one side. However, I do want to make it slightly more straight. I think if I turn it around, you'll have a better perspective on things. So in the same manner, I will put the Raffia tape. It's going to be a little tricky, and I can actually pin it to the older pseudobulb as well. So sometimes if you have older pseudobulbs that are straight and pretty sturdy, you can tie the new growth to the older pseudobulb. Let's see. Okay, this is not okay. This looks better, so I think this will give room to the new growth as well and prevent it from growing into my curtain. Oh, I have quite a lot of wiggle room, but I am quite happy with this. As it grows, I can actually rearrange it, and I'll show you a case of a Cattleya that you can train even though the pseudobulb is completely mature. So there are some Cattleyas which have pretty long and pretty thin pseudobulbs. These are ideal to train when the pseudobulbs are mature. You can actually train individual pseudobulbs even if they're a few years old. And this is one of them. The tag disappeared. I don't know where it went, but this is the Cattleya Monte Elegante, and we have some good news. We have a little sheet here and it actually has something inside. So yay! However, it's not gonna be the prettiest flower display because this is just so tiny in comparison to the older bulbs. Yeah, pretty huge difference. However, I want to train a little bit of this particular cane. This doesn't bother me too much. It's not growing into anything, but just for the sake of demonstration, I can show you that it's pretty easy to train something like this. So with a full-grown pseudobulb, you again should not try to pin it towards the base. Actually, the place that works the greatest for me is right here at the top where the leaves start to grow. Right here, you can actually play with the flexibility of the pseudobulb. Again, test to see where the resistance point is. I think it's up to here, and it's more than ideal. So again, I will pin it to an older pseudobulb and stake, and that pretty much does it. So here is this orchid trained. It's so funny. This word is so funny. Train your plants. Sit, fetch, bloom. They're not good at commands though. Now there are some orchids that sadly through their way of growth cannot be trained, and one of them is the famous Phalaenopsis orchid. Now there is a technique where you let one of the leaves grow with the light source from one direction and then turning it around so the other leaf does not go in the same direction but the opposite direction. Hope you get what I mean. Well, that kind of doesn't always work. Some people manage to make it work. I couldn't manage, and I ended up with an orchid with leaves twisting all around. So I'd rather have a Phalaenopsis orchid pending down like this. I think it's a pretty sight anyway. If you have light sources coming from above, this behavior might be diminished. However, it is in their nature to droop down like this. Normally in nature they would grow like this. So it's pretty normal for a Phalaenopsis orchid, and you cannot really do anything about it than to try to stabilize it with a heavy clay pot or a decorative pot. But when it comes to staking something to try to make this straight, nah, it's impossible. Don't try it, you're gonna break it. And also there are orchids with not very tall pseudobulbs like the Encyclia cordidera, although this came with the tag Psychilus atropurpureum, so it might be something else. It never bloomed. So with this one, I cannot train it no matter what I do. I made my peace with it, so I opted to grow it in a pretty shallow pot but pretty wide pot. And to anticipate a few of the comments that I will receive, I am okay with this type of pot and I don't consider it over potted because this is in no way different than a mount, except that we do have a lot more medium. However, I can control the quantity of water or moisture that this medium can hold. So pretty much everything is okay. And as another side note, the Encyclias, these types of Encyclias were very affected by the root burst situation, as you can see. However, the new roots start to grow without burning, finally. So happy. And as another side note, oh my god, this orchid has a rich history. This was the orchid that had that incredibly ugly fungal disease displaying on her leaves because of a very, very bad potting medium that I used. And I made a few videos on it, and I said that I don't think it has any chances. However, it managed to overcome the disease and she's perfectly fine, no more spots, she's doing quite well. So this one is a survivor for me. As a consequence, it never bloomed, but hope is not lost. Another family of orchids that cannot be trained, in my opinion, or some of them at least, is the Bulbophyllum Orchids, and this is the Elizabeth and Buckleberry. They are usually creeping type of orchids, so you can see the rhizome will creep on the top of the pot, and pretty much you cannot stake it to grow up. So again, I made my peace with it, and I'm growing it in this shallower but wider pot, and she seems to like it. However, there is something you can do with these orchids as well. You can pretty much try to induce the direction of growth by placing this orchid in a particular manner to the light source. And to better explain what I mean, I will share with you a video made by Bumblebee here, how she likes to train the pattern of growth. So not the growth themselves, but the pattern of growth. Pretty much where the growth will head towards. It's not foolproof. I have some orchids that absolutely grow wherever they want, but for the main part, it does work. I am applying the same strategy as much as possible, and it does give some results. So if you're interested in that, just check the video. It's a good one. So alrighty guys, thank you for watching this video. I will continue to do some maintenance. Pretty much the Cattleyas need staking up and all of that. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this useful. If you'd like to see more orchid videos from me, simply subscribe to my channel. I post on a daily basis. Also, feel free to leave me comments down below if you have questions or suggestions for videos. I always check my comments, and if you ever want to send me a letter, do so at the address you see right here or in the description below. Choose an option on the screen right now if you'd like to be directed to orchidnature.com or watch another orchid video. Thank you for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye!